Anna, I first, became aware of you because after 2020, back 70 years ago, after the election, it feels like you had a lot of great critiques of your own party. Because remember back then, y'all, this was before January 6th, before we had other problems on our plate. But really, the Republican Party, the election was way too close, right? It felt too close between Trump and Biden, even though, of course, Biden handily won. It still felt close. It still felt like 75 million people voting for Trump was not okay. And also that, Democrats actually lost House seats in Congress. And you had the, really great insight that was from your vantage point in Florida, saying that you have seen Democrats sort of lose sort of ground that they shouldn't have lost because they haven't gotten on board with some policies that people like. For example, the $15 minimum wage ballot measure in Florida that passed successfully, but that the Democratic Party in Florida didn't officially come out and endorse. Tell me more about that critique and sort of your thoughts now on where you see the Democratic Party, maybe in your state, headed.
Yeah, I love to. My first thought is I saw in the chat, what values Trump has, and I agree with that point. But I do think that when people think Trump, his positions automatically come to your mind. With the Democratic Party, especially in Florida, it is so hard for folks to even realize what it means to be a Democrat. If you ask, what's a typical Democrat in Florida, folks are struggling to make a contrast because we have not done a good job in actually standing up for issues that matter. And I look back at my first campaigns. I worked at Planned Parenthood for 6 years before I ran for office. I'm a working class girl, a daughter of immigrants. I am loud, I am brown, I'm a woman. And when I decided to be a candidate for the first time back in 2018, the Democratic Party did not take me seriously. They thought I was too risky. They thought that I wasn't viable. I didn't come for money. And they made fun of me. Really, they were looking for someone who looked like a winner, right? A typical tall white guy with a recognizable name. So we had to build our movement from scratch. And we flipped the seat. And it wasn't until I raised $50,000 my first month from grassroots donors that we started being seen as viable. And I think that's reminiscent of just the continued status quo, consultant-driven politics of the Florida Democratic Party, where money is misspent because it goes to the same consultants with the same BS advice. We don't invest in field. We don't invest in building a bench. We put dollars towards TV ads, towards cut and paste commercials versus actually sharing our values. And to your point about the $15 minimum wage, our top Democrat in the state of Florida was shy to endorse it. Utility companies are continue to overprice Florida customers, but nobody wants to say anything because they're big political donors. Same thing for the sugar industry. We just had a bill on the House floor. I won't go into it, but it basically granted immunity to the sugar industry. There were only 7 people who voted against that fucking bill. Excuse my language, but I'm just like, this is a bill that is hurting Black and brown people, and it would challenge the sugar industry in Florida, and only 7 people voted against it, right?
It feels it's very reminiscent of the Parks and Rec Sweetums Corporation and sort of the way that they're just handing out sugar and candy to everybody and and just buying folks off. Damn.
100%.
So you feel, and I think that a lot of the identity of Democrats has also been, I remember you were talking about, an anti-Trump identity. And so you're saying that, I don't know what you're saying. What do you feel like the identity of the Democratic Party should be?
No, I think that's well said, Francesca. It was anti-Trump. Everything was anti-Trump in 2020. So we never faced any of the, first of all, disinformation campaigns. Especially in communities of color and communities who speak multiple languages, there was so much disinformation about trans rights, about abortion rights. That wasn't proactively addressed. The Democratic Party actually applied for a PPP loan, which I called them out for because it was ridiculous. And it also demonstrated a sense of disconnection from small businesses who were struggling through the pandemic. And it was the biggest mistake ever. I saw in the chat that somebody mentioned Terry Rizzo. The good news in Florida is that both the executive director and the party chair have since stepped down from 2020. So we do have new leadership now, not to say, everything's rosy, but at least we have new people at the helm. But yeah, there wasn't anything proactive to say, this is what it means to be a Democrat. And I take a lot of pride because we swung our seat. No, by no means is my seat, predetermined to be a Democratic seat, but we are bold and authentic and accessible, and we focus on constituent services to the point where we find common ground with folks who are different from us because we connect on a human level. But advocating for humanity also means challenging corporate special interests, which so many Democrats don't want to do because they benefit from that status quo.
Hey, thanks so much for watching the Bitchuation Room podcast live stream. And while you're here, why don't you just subscribe to this channel? I promise it'll be good. Promise.